very much, Rich. All right, like I said, like Rich said, I don't think Mr. Atkins needs much introduction. So let's just bring him on up, Mr. Tom Atkins.
Okay. Come on, Mike, you coming?
I'm coming.
Hi, everybody. Thanks a lot for coming. Is this working? Can you hear me? All right.
Alrighty, let's start off with an easy one. What drew you to acting?
Oh, my God. That's easy?
Yeah.
I never know. I went to Duquesne University. What? Somebody say something? Girls. I went to Duquesne University, and I was majoring in journalism, and it was the 60s, and I just got out of the Navy, and I started dating a girl at Duquesne, and she was all wrapped up in the Red Maskers, an extracurricular theater group at Duquesne University. So I started seeing more and more of the theater group and getting involved in it and becoming an actor, and less of her, and that's how I got started in acting. When I finished at Duquesne, I went right to New York, and that was that.
Now, having done acting on both stage and screen, do you prefer one over the other?
I prefer screen. It's just weird lighting. It's just like horror movie lighting, right? It's right up our noses and faces, yeah. So, no, I prefer screen because it's a much better payday and much less work. Theater is very hard and it doesn't pay any money, and it never did, unless you're playing, you're doing the starring role in a big hit musical on Broadway. Then you make good money. Otherwise, screen and television, yeah, I prefer them.
So your first film was The Detective with Frank Sinatra and a slew of other actors. Now, as a young actor, were you intimidated on set? Or tell us about your experience with that film.
Yes, I was. I was very intimidated. I was in New York just starting out. It was, I think I had already done a play, a Broadway show, and then, but I got an audition for this movie, The Detective. And I went to the Pierre, or the Sherry Netherland, I forget, a very Tony hotel on the east side of New York to meet with the director. And when I went in to meet with the director, it was for the role of Harmon, a rookie cop who killed a black guy in a car on accident. I mean, the guy reached for something and he thought he was reaching for a gun, and I did, and I killed him. So the whole city blew up, and I went into the meeting, and the director was there, and then in walked Mr. Sinatra. So I had to read the scene with Sinatra where he chewed me out. And it went really well. He was a great guy, very nice, very, very generous and charming, and it was terrific. And when he left, the director said, "Well, you got the part." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, I knew, you know, it went great, so the part is yours. The only thing I need to know, can you act that nervous when we shoot the scene?" And I said, "Absolutely, man. Yeah, you kidding me? That's Frank Sinatra, for Christ's sake." Yeah. When he was a rookie cop, he was supposed to be nervous. He was getting chewed out by the Gold Shield detective of the squad. Yeah, that's how that movie happened.
So let's talk about the film that everyone's going to see this evening, Escape from New York. Talk about your character in the film, and also what was it like working with Kurt Russell in what ultimately became one of his most iconic roles?
Yeah, I enjoyed making this movie a lot. I don't have a lot to do in the movie. It's certainly not my movie, but I played Rehme, and I was Lee Van Cleef's right-hand man. We ran the prison that Manhattan was. It was the forgotten zone in an apocalyptic future. And Kurt was great. We knew each other from just being out in LA and both knowing John and Adrienne. And we had a great time. But somebody asked me out there, what was it like to work with Ernie Borgnine in this movie? But the trouble is, I didn't get to work with hardly anybody in the movie, except Lee and Kurt, and at the end, Donald Pleasance for a second and a half. And the rest of them, they all went to St. Louis. We shot our stuff out in, at the Van Nuys Reservoir and at Jet Propulsion Lab in Pasadena and places like that. But the guts of the movie shot in St. Louis, which was just a destroyed area, a rundown part of the city. And they thought it looked great for an apocalyptic Manhattan. And that's where Adrienne and Harry Dean Stanton and Ernie Borgnine and all those guys went there to shoot.
So moving on to Lethal Weapon, an obvious big Hollywood blockbuster. Talk about working on this film and your experience working with Mel Gibson and there's obviously some fans of Lethal Weapon in here.
Yeah, Lethal Weapon was probably the most successful movie I was ever in. I think everybody in the world saw it 6 times. It really made a ton of money, and I got a lot of work out of Lethal Weapon. Even though I only have 2 scenes in the movie, but they were both golden scenes with Danny in the bank, moaning about my poor daughter who went out the window, and I wanted him to kill everybody responsible for it. And then at my home, having to wait for my daughter, where I got shot by Gary Busey from a helicopter through my French doors, through my back, out my stomach, and through my eggnog. And it was a terrific job. Wonderful director, Richard Donner, who was a real old-fashioned, still is, he's alive as far as I know. But he's an old-fashioned cigar-smoking guy who talked to everybody, asked everybody's opinion. When we shot out there in Pacific Palisades at my house where I got killed, he would talk to everybody in the front street and tell them what we were about to do and ask their opinion. Do you think it'll work? Do you think that'll be okay? And if Gary shoots him, would that be all right? He's just a delicious kind of a guy, and he invited everybody to dailies every Friday, and he would have champagne and booze every Friday for dailies. It was great.
So Mel Gibson, was he as intense in...
Mel Gibson was on the edge of both scenes. You know, he was outside in the yard when I got killed, and he shot at the helicopter flying away. And he was on the edge of the bank, like at the rail when Danny and I were talking about my daughter. And we barely got, we met each other, said hello, and had a cigarette together outside. He was a heavy smoker. He had, one of the things he had, at the little honey wagon, he didn't have a big trailer or anything. It wasn't, he wasn't a huge star then, but he had done Mad Max and a couple other things. So he had this little portable trampoline, and he would just jump up and down, smoking a cigarette, and keep it, and his body, he was in great shape, and it kept him in good shape. The cigarettes had him, hurt him later, but yeah, he was a good guy. There was an interesting thing, I don't want to talk too long about it, but just before we did Lethal Weapon, Vic Morrow and a young Vietnamese kid were killed by a helicopter crash that happened on the set of, do you know? Right, a Landis movie, yeah. And so, when the extras at the my death scene were out in the yard were told that a helicopter was going to come up the cliff, you know, from the beach to the cliff, which was about 150 feet. It was, the house and yard were way up on top of this cliff down in Pacific Palisades. They wanted to quit and not do it because we rehearsed it once, and as soon as that helicopter cleared the cliff and hovered off the edge of the yard, they all wanted to quit, and Donner had the helicopter gaffing guy, you know, who gaffed the gag of the helicopter. He reassured them that it was only when it hovers that it's dangerous, and when it's flying over the yard, there's no danger there, and it was hovering over the ocean, so that they said, okay, well, then, because Donner was ready to fire them all and just hire 150 new ones for that day.
Now, you've made a huge contribution to the horror genre. Are you a fan of horror films? And if so, what are some of your favorites?
Well, I used to be, but I'm not anymore. When I was a kid growing up here in Pittsburgh, I went with a bunch of my old pals from Knoxville. We went up to the Mount Oliver Harris Theater and saw The Thing. 1953, I think. 1 or 3, somewhere in there. And I loved that movie. I just loved the original, The Thing from Outer Space. And a week later, it was playing over in Allentown, which I could walk to. And I asked a bunch of the guys, come on, you want to go see The Thing again? It was so good. Nah. So I went by myself. And it started at 6 in the evening, and I thought, on the way in, I thought, oh, it's going to be dark when I come out. I'm all by myself. Well, in the thing gets cut out of the ice and put onto a table in a room covered with a blanket, and there's a guy sitting there on a radio operator or something, and he's just sitting there smoking and reading, and it starts dripping, and it's melting, and I knew what was going to come out of that ice, and I ran all the way home. But new movies like Saw, and they're so relentlessly gory with no one to care about. I don't care for them. I don't like them. And there you are. And I loved, who's the wonderful old gentleman of horror? Oh my God. Vincent Price. I wanted to be Vincent Price, I think, or have a career like his. And I loved the old movies he was in. Anyway, yeah, I don't care for new ones, but I like the old ones.
Now, one of my favorite horror films, and I heard it's one of your favorite that you did, Night of the Creeps.
Here's Steve.
Talk a little bit about that film, what makes it your favorite, and also how the famous line "Thrill Me" came about.
I had a lot of great lines in that movie. "Thrill Me" was the most iconic. And Fred wrote it. I don't know why he wrote it. Fred Dekker, a wonderful writer-director, and it is my favorite film that I've ever done. We just had more fun doing that movie than anything I've ever been involved in. I don't think it's the best movie I've ever been in, but it's my favorite. And I also had It's Miller Time, and come on, Spanky and Alfalfa, you used to call the kids that, and in the sorority near the end, when I walked up and looked out the window and turned to the girls in the room and said, well, girls, I got good news and I got bad news. The good news is your dates are here. What's the bad news? They're dead. It cut to the outside lawn, and there's all the zombie kids in their tuxedos coming to take them to the prom. I love that movie. It was a hoot to do. It was great fun, great flick.
Now, moving to Halloween 3, Season of the Witch.
Yeah.
Now, this film has a huge cult following, as well as its critics. Now, I want to ask you, the main criticism of the film is, it's Halloween film without Michael Myers. How do you react to that statement when people say that?
I don't care. It doesn't matter. Michael Myers was never in Halloween 3, so I didn't care if Michael Myers was in Halloween 3 or not, and some people were disappointed that Michael Myers was not in it and condemned the movie for that. But it's a hell of a good movie, and it stands on its own. It didn't need Michael Myers. That's the way I feel about it.
So, moving to The Fog, how did you get involved in working on that film, and talk a little bit about what it was like to work with Jamie Lee Curtis?
It was great working with Jamie Lee. How I got involved in The Fog, my first wife at that time out there in California was good friends with Adrienne Barbeau, so I was good friends with Adrienne Barbeau. Adrienne Barbeau started dating John Carpenter and said to me and Garn and his friend Jeannie, who went with us, I really like this guy. I think I might want to marry this guy. I want you to meet him. So we went to a screening of Halloween at the Directors Guild out in LA. And I was in the middle. Jeannie was on my right. My wife was on my left. And they would go during the movie, oh my God. And they would hide because Halloween, man, that was a wonderfully scary, lot of zings in that, and they would say, can we look? And, yeah, go ahead. Oh, you son of a bitch! Oh. So at the end of the movie, both of them leaned across me and said, we cannot let Adrienne marry this guy. This guy is too weird. So that was, I met him that night, and not long thereafter, he invited me to do Nick Castle in The Fog. I don't know why, but he did, and I enjoyed doing it. We had a great time. We shot up in Northern California. Jamie was in it, and her mom was in it. Janet Leigh, wonderful lady of film and screen and theater, and a great old dame. We had a great time. Shot up in Inverness and Bodega Bay, where Hitchcock shot The Birds up in Northern California, but kind of just outside north of San Francisco, and beautiful part of the country. Point Reyes Lighthouse, where Adrienne supposedly was on top of the lighthouse, and Jamie Lee. I got a bit of a reputation for those movies. I don't know why. Maybe it was a mustache. I don't know, which I don't have right now. But they. I love it. In The Fog, I'm driving this old beat-up truck, which was a monster to drive. I don't know how in the hell they ever got it through the whole movie. But I come down the road and she's hitchhiking, and I pick her up. She gets in the truck and says, "Are you weird?" And my answer was, "Yes, I am." And I offer her a drink of beer, which I had between my legs, and she takes a sip, and then the next thing, we're in bed and I'm looking at her art. And she was great. She was 19, I was 34, and we had a wonderful time shooting the movie. And we shot pretty much all of it up there in Northern California. John liked the area so much, he and Adrienne bought a house up there in Inverness, and you know, for a getaway house. They lived in LA, out in the valley in Studio City. Yeah, we had a wonderful time. With some of it we did down at the little Raleigh studio near Paramount in LA. Some of my favorite things in the fall were watching Tommy Lee Wallace, who directed Halloween 3 and wrote it. But he was the head of all the special effects in The Fog. And that was the day before CGI stuff. So there's Tommy at the end of the street of Inverness, a little town, a village, and with 2 fans and a fog machine trying to make enough fog to make it look threatening to this village. Oh my God, we would just howl with laughter and wait hours to get a shot. And even then they weren't, you know, didn't look that great.
So you worked with another, he's not from Pittsburgh, but made Pittsburgh sort of famous.
George Romero.
That's right. How'd you
Oh, yeah, the best.
So
The best.
So in Creepshow, Two Evil Eyes, and Bruiser. Talk about working on these films, just a little bit of each, and what it was like to work with an iconic director such as George.
George is just the sweetest guy, a big bear of a guy, and a huggy kind of a guy, and just a wonderful man. Not Pittsburgh-born, but he certainly spent most of his life here. I think he might have been born in Cuba. His family is Cuban, but
he spent his early years in New York.
Yeah.
In the Bronx.
Yeah. So he, I knew George from Pittsburgh, but hadn't worked with him. And I was out in LA and I went to meet with him for Creepshow, the first movie that I worked with him on. And he and Chris, his wife then, who was his producer, they were in a room and he said, "So, did you read the script?" I said, "Yeah, I loved it. It was just great. And it's so much like a comic book, and it'll be wonderful." He said, "Was there anybody in there that you kind of liked that you might want to play?" I said, "Yeah, I like that Geordie guy that gets eaten with swamp shit and dies, you know, I like that." And he said, "Well, you know, Stephen King and I wrote this, and Stephen's going to play that part." I said, "Well, then, there you are." He said, "Would you do me a big favor and play the dad at the beginning and at the end, and that wraps it all together, that you don't want your kid to read that crap, and then he voodoos you to death at the end?" I said, "Yeah, sure." So I did. We had a wonderful time shooting that here in Pittsburgh. At Murraysville, Monroeville, I think, was the house where I threw the stuff into the garbage can, which Tom Savini picked up. He was the garbage man. Him and the other funny filmmaker from here, Tony something. Anyway, we had a great time. Then Stephen King was on the set. He came up, stepped into the honey wagon and said, Tom, Stephen, really nice to meet you, man. It's a terrific script. I can't wait to, you know, see how it all turns out." Yeah. "Tell me, what is Jamie Lee Curtis really like?" What a dirty old man he was. And his son played my son in that movie, in Creepshow, Joe King. He was 9 years old. And Stephen was so worried because I had to slap him because I didn't want him reading that crap. And he was so worried. I said, don't worry, Stephen. I've been doing this a long time. I know how to act. I know how to... It'll look good, but it won't hurt him. And it didn't, and it was fine. I saw Joe King not too long ago up in Boston at a Rocket Shock or something, one of these horror conventions, and he's 35 or 40 now, and big, full brown head, brown beard, brown eyebrows. You can't hardly see anybody in there, but you know it's a king when you look at it. And he's writing his own books. Bruiser, I did Bruiser up in Toronto with George. I think that was one of the first that he went to Canada for. That is not my favorite film. I did not care for the way that didn't turn out that good. I don't know what it was. It just wrong people in the parts, and I don't know. And Two Evil Eyes, that was fun. We shot here in Pittsburgh with the Italian guy did the other
Argento.
half. Yeah, Argento.
So I'm gonna put you on the spot.
Okay.
Carpenter
Yeah.
or Romero? Who's better director?
Oh, Romero. Romero. Yeah, I think so. I think so.
So
John Carpenter is an odd guy. He at least then, and I think still now, I guess he directs once in a while still, maybe. But he get off my wire.
Sorry.
Okay, that's all right. But he cares much more about the rubber and the special effects of a movie than the people in the movie, and that's why I don't think it's harder to respond to his films. The Fog he did pretty good, and he was worried about it. It was a ghost story. He wasn't sure if we could get away with it, but that worked good. But I think the best movie that John ever made was Starman with Bridges, and that was a terrific film. And Bridges was brilliant in it. He was great. Yeah.
So quickly moving to the stage, you portray Ebenezer Scrooge.
Yes.
Talk about how you bring your own take on such a timeless character.
Well, it's me, after all. And I've done it 7 times, and Alistair Sims is my favorite version, the old black and white movie from the early 40s or 30s, maybe even. And it's a wonderful, wonderful script and story. And I don't think you really realize that until you're doing it. And then you think, wow, this is great stuff. And you get to put everybody in the mood for Christmas. You know, it's just, I love that. I hope I can do it for 3 or 4 more years, and then I'll pack it in. But yeah, 7 years I've done it downtown, and we always have a wonderful cast, some of whom I've done in 7 years, but Jeff Howell, who does Cratchit, has done it 17 years, and Tim Hartman has done it. I think overall it's 22 or 3 years, the production, and he's been in all but one, or a couple, yeah.
So another stage production that you were in, The Chief.
Yeah.
Talk about how you prepared to tackle such an important Pittsburgh icon as Art Rooney.
Gonna have time to watch the movie?
There's one more question.
God!
One more question.
Oh, no. The Chief, yeah, the Chief was the role of my life. I'm blessed to have gotten it, and Gene Collier and Rob Sellers wrote it with me in mind, and I'm forever thankful for them for that. And I love doing it. It's an hour and a half long. It's all the old man, Art Rooney Sr., telling you stories about his life as a kid growing up, getting older, betting horses, politics and old-time Pittsburgh and the church and Chris McCrae, the fat guy who ate himself to death. It's full of wonderful, wonderful old stories. And when I first read it, and we did it down at the public around a table, and I thought, man, I don't know, does anybody really want to listen to this? An old guy for an hour and a half? And man, I'll tell you, the first audience, they just knocked the theater down. It was, obviously people love it, and we've done it 10 years, and hopefully Ted will want to do it again sometime down at the public, and I'll still be here to do it. Thanks.
Now, last question from the audience. This is a personal one, and if no one else likes this movie, I don't care. You were in striking distance.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh, which I feel highlights Pittsburgh better than any other visually. There's some stunning shots of Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Talk about working on that film and what it was like working with Bruce Willis.
Oh, you had to ask me that?
You don't like him, do you?
Oh, man. He's okay, He's okay. He's a movie star. There's a guy, Rowdy Harrington was the writer-director of that movie. And he's a Pittsburgh guy, Rowdy. And I think grew up about 51 past Ross Street, right out there somewhere. And I think he was disappointed ultimately with the way it turned out. It had a lot to do with Bruce, that he wasn't crazy about working with Bruce. But I thought it was a terrific story. He just had a hard time getting that story from the page up on the screen. But for the most part, I thought it worked really well. And I didn't have all that much to do with Bruce. I didn't have that big a part in the film. But he's a very self-savvy guy. He knows where he is in the movie and like that. But it was okay. Rowdy was great to work with, and Dennis Farina was great to work with, and all the other guys in the movie were a lot of fun and great to work with. A little side story, we did this big policeman's ball down in at the Point Park, and we shot all night, and the scene was to end with fireworks and Tom Sizemore drunk on top of a table with the fireworks going off behind him, ranting his screed against my family and his uncle and stuff. And he was supposed to be drunk, so Tom at the time, he has a certain reputation. But he was a terrific guy, but he decided that if I'm going to play drunk, I'm going to get drunk. So he went and he got loaded. And it came time to shoot the scene, and he had a hard time getting up onto the table. So Rowdy came over and said, Tom, Dennis, could you help him get... Oh yeah, sure. So next take, he starts it up onto the chair, and then we take his either arm or backside or back of his leg, get him onto the table, and then just give him just one little extra shove that took him off the other side of the table. Oh my God, we could have gotten in trouble for that. But we had a lot of fun, and he had a hard time getting that scene in. The people in Mount Washington hated everybody in that movie because we kept them up all night with bright Cleef lights shining up there and fireworks going off and noise in the Point Park. It was wonderful. It was a great experience. One of the treats of my life.
All right, do we have any questions from the audience? We have time for...
I can't see them. How would you know?
I think there's a hand right there. Go ahead. Stand up, sir.
From working in LA and Pittsburgh,
Yeah.
I work in the film industry in Pittsburgh. Which one do you prefer better?
Working in LA
And
or Pittsburgh?
Yeah. Which one would you like better?
I don't think there is any such. That's not a fair question. I love the work, and if it's a movie, well, I've done plays in LA, and I did movies and TV in LA, and I've done movies and plays in Pittsburgh. I love the work. It didn't matter where the work was.
Well, how about the crew in those two?
Oh, the crews in LA are great. They're very professional. They've been doing it forever. And the crews in Pittsburgh are great. And they haven't been doing it forever, but they learn quick. They're very solid and very professional. Yeah, they're terrific.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Tell us about working on the Rockford Files.
Oh, I love the Rockford Files. I did 5 or 6 of them, and then we did 3 movies in the 90s, where I was Lieutenant Alex Steele in the Rockford Files, and then in the 90s, I was Commander Alex Steele. I had gotten promoted in 20 years. And Jimmy Garner is my favorite actor of all time. I enjoyed working with him more than anybody. He was the loveliest, just the best. He was the best. Wonderful actor, wonderful man, great guy. And yeah, and that was my early days in LA. I think I had done a recurring part on a series called Harry O with David Jansen. Just before that, we shot down in San Diego because David Jansen wanted to, and because he loved going to Del Mar Racetrack, and he said, if I'm going to shoot this series, we're going to shoot it down there, near the track. And that's what they did. But Jimmy Garner and Rockford, and I never, a lot of you think because of that series that I never worked with Angel once in any of them. We were always in different episodes. And I never worked with Jimmy Luisi. I worked with Dennis a lot, and Jimmy. Yeah, I love that series.
Alrighty, we're out of time for the Q&A portion, but I do have one final announcement that I'd like to make for the Hollywood Theater. The Hollywood Theater will be having a Tom Atkins week this Halloween season.
Oh!
So, you have to mark your calendars for October 23rd and 29th. The Hollywood will be playing 3 of Tom's films, Night of the Creeps, Halloween 3, and The Fog. So ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Mr. Tom Atkins.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot. Thanks, everybody.